Okay, now we have exploration and colonization of Georgia, standard SS8H2. England. Why did England explore? They wanted to find gold, land, and resources. Remember, the more land they explore, they get to use those resources, they get to claim it as their own, and they become more powerful. They also want to spread Christianity for a small part, but a larger group of the English colonists, escaped for religious freedom. They wanted to be able to practice whatever religion they believed in and not have to either practice one or be threatened to be put to death. They settled in North America, where the 13 colonies developed from Georgia to Maine. They explored in the 1500s. The first of 13 colonies is settled in 1607, and the last, being Georgia, is 1732, and they explored second right after Spain. All right. Little background information. I'll move myself out of the way. During the 1530s, there's a split in the Catholic Church. We've got the Holy Roman Catholic Church and then the Church of England. They are Protestants. They're both Christians. Catholics and Protestants are both Christians. They split because, I have to keep moving this thing, Henry VIII, we talked about him. He had 6 different wives, and the Catholic Church would not grant him the divorce that he wanted, and so he decided to split from the Catholic Church and create his own church, the Church of England. As the head of that church, he is able to grant himself divorces as well. Kind of a selfish move, but that church exists today. The Queen of England is still the head of the Anglican Church. 6 wives. We talked about divorce. Divorce, beheaded, and died. Divorce, beheaded, survived. Here we go. His heirs, from Catherine of Aragon, one of his wives, he has Mary, the daughter Mary. She becomes queen first. She is Catholic. She demands that everybody in all of where she rules has to be Catholic. If not, you can be put to death. When she is off the throne, then it is Queen Elizabeth I, not the Queen Elizabeth that is the queen today, and she is a Protestant. So after all these years of Mary saying you have to be Catholic, now she comes around and tells everybody, no, you have to be Protestant. You have 2 choices. You can be Protestant or you can die. So you can see why people over there were upset about this. So after the defeat of the Spanish Armada, because remember, Spain was the dominant world power before this, because they explored first and found goods and riches and all sorts first. In 1600, English began their permanent settlements along the Atlantic coast, would eventually become the 13 colonies. Why? Religious refuge, economic gains, bringing Christianity to natives, and a new start. Religious refuge, getting to practice whatever religion they want. Economic gains, they're getting to come and have land that just doesn't exist in England. There's a lot more land over here in America, so everybody can have a chance to make those gains, to grow and sell and be prosperous. They want to bring Christianity to the natives, and like anybody else, sometimes people just wanted a new start. Mercantilism. Remember, we just talked about this as our warm-up. Mercantilism, a trade policy where England should export more than it imports, because if it's exporting, it's selling it, and they're making money, and that is the whole goal. That was a huge part of why they even colonized, to get the raw materials so that they could sell more than they had to buy. Because before that, they had to buy cotton for their clothes, forest products like wood or paper, tobacco, and some foods, because England is a small area and it's not ideal for growing a lot of things. So after they start colonizing and they are able to employ mercantilism, the colonies produce the raw materials, ship them to England. England makes a finished good out of it, something that can be sold, and they either sell it to some other country or sometimes back to the colonists. Example. Queen Caroline of England loved dresses made of silk, but it can't be, their climate in England does not allow for mulberry trees to be grown, which is what silkworms eat, to have silk, so they have to buy it from Italy. So this is why Georgia especially is tasked at growing mulberry trees to help the silkworms create silk. All right, there's our 13 original colonies. Jamestown being the very first, named after King James I. That first group that arrives there in Jamestown doesn't do so well. 104 arrive. There's only 38 left by the next spring because they don't get there in time to plant stuff, they don't have enough to eat, and they get sick. Now, when John Rolfe shows up, he brings tobacco seeds. They start planting tobacco, and that stuff grows like crazy, and they're very successful after that. Indentured servants. They talked about the two ways people could get to America if they couldn't afford to pay for the trip over. They could come as an indentured servant, which is basically an agreement. If I pay for someone to come over to live in one of the colonies, then they pay me back by working for me. Or slaves. Slaves were often captured and kidnapped and brought over here against their will. James Oglethorpe, very important man as far as you guys are concerned. He is the founder of Georgia. He came up with the idea for Georgia because of his friend Robert Castell. He was a man that did not like to see people suffering and having hard times, so he wanted to help those people that are in trouble. They come up with this idea for the colony of Georgia to help debtors. Oh my goodness, I'm going to have to keep moving this picture. A debtor is someone that owes money to someone else. Reform is a process of helping them change and changing a system so that people actually benefit from it. Remember, we talked about debtors. They just went to debtor's prison. How are you supposed to pay off the money you owe somebody if you're stuck in prison? It doesn't work very well. So James Oglethorpe comes up with this colony idea for the working poor. Let them come here. Let them have a fresh start. Let them make the money they need to pay off their debts. So, out of all the ideas that are thrown at him, King George says, yeah, I like your idea for Georgia. I need a colony that is going to be a buffer between the Spanish down here in Florida, okay, and his royal colonies here as far as South Carolina, because they're making big money for him at this point. So their reasons for settlement being philanthropy, economics, and defense. The debtors, that would be the philanthropy, helping the poor people that didn't have a way to get themselves out of debt. The economics were producing silk through mulberry trees, indigo, that's the blue plant to dye stuff, and wine by growing grapes. In defense, they were supposed to protect the other colonies from the threat of the Spanish down in Florida, any angry Native Americans, and French out to the west. So, Georgia was to become a trustee colony. There are going to be 21 trustees to manage the colony for 21 years, and Oglethorpe is one of these trustees. Okay. The Charter of 1732 is the legal document that actually sets up Georgia. It sets up the physical boundaries. It states that the trustees are to manage the colony. It excludes Catholic slaves, liquor sales, and lawyers. Remember that. That's very important. All regulations still had to go through King George II. Just instead of a royal governor, they had their 21 trustees. Their boundaries were much different than today. It went from the Savannah River to the Altamaha River, all the way out to the Pacific Ocean. And as you now know from what you've learned, our western border shrinks continually until it is where it exists today. They're given 50 acres, the colonists, when they decide to come here. They're given tools and food for a year to get all that. They have to agree to defend the colony. They're not allowed to sell the land that they're given. They need to grow the crops using the tools they're given, plant mulberry trees, and obey all the rules of the trustees. So in November 1732, they set out. 3 months later, they arrive in Georgia, and they land here in Savannah, what is present-day Savannah, Yamacraw Bluff. Okay, Oglethorpe meets the Yamacraw, and he goes about this in a peaceful manner. He's seen enough violence in his life to know that he needs to go and politely ask for a place to live rather than try and take it. Fortunately, Chief Tom, who's chief of the Yamacraw, feels the same way. He too has seen violence. He doesn't want that, so he is happy to give Oglethorpe some land because he asked for it, and they have a very beneficial relationship. They have a translator, Mary Musgrove. She is married to a white man, so she understands both English and Yamacraw and is able to translate many things for them and allow them to develop a relationship that is beneficial for both the Yamacraw and the British settlers. So that's founded in 1733. The design for Savannah, and that design where all the squares there still exist in the historical downtown part, it's based on a design by Robert Castell, Oglethorpe's friend, who died in debtor's prison. So our first group of other colonists are the Jewish colonists. They're European Jews that arrive 5 months later while the British colonists are in the midst of a medical crisis, dying from yellow fever. Fortunately, Dr. Samuel Nunez is able to help many people survive. They established the Jewish religion here in the colony, but as you can imagine, being from different countries, they don't speak the same language. You know from your experience in social studies how different the religious and cultural practices and understandings are between Christianity and Judaism. Then we have the Salzburgers. They are German-speaking Protestants who were kicked out of Salzburg. They come to Georgia, given the land and they call it Ebenezer. They live there until the mosquitoes and the malaria start killing people. They go back to James Oglethorpe. He gives them a new section of land. They name it New Ebenezer. So if you remember the Z in Salzburgers and the Z in Ebenezer, you'll be doing good. They established the Lutheran Church here in Georgia. They established the first Sunday school, and they also established the Bethesda Orphans Home. The Highland Scots. They come to Georgia in the 1730s as well. They are Scottish Protestants. They came also for religious freedom. They are given land south of Savannah. It's present-day Darien. That's what they named it. They created the first Presbyterian church here in Georgia, and they are known specifically for their fighting skills, their ability with a broadsword. So they wanted them here to help defend against the Spanish, specifically down south in Florida. But not just the men, but the women. The Scottish women were able to defend themselves as well. So if you look here, it's Chatham County. That's where Savannah is. So a little up north to Effingham, there's New Ebenezer. Then down here to McIntosh County, that's Darien. All right, the malcontents. These are British colonists who are not happy with the trustees, the way things are running. They want slaves, they want liquor, their crops are not successful. They see colonists up in South Carolina who are incredibly successful, and they want that, and they're not quiet about complaining. So, in 1752, Georgia becomes a royal colony, which is ruled by a royal governor. No more trustees. So, different rules. A lot of things are repealed once they become a royal colony. Okay, they had 3 different royal governors from when they become a royal colony until the Revolution, because they're no longer a colony at that point. In order to own land in a royal colony, you had to be white and male. To vote, you had to have 50 acres, which all those people that came originally would have 50 acres. To serve in political office, a man had to own 500 acres. So if a man can own 500 acres, you know now that they're able to buy and sell land. And as more people come to Georgia, they want their own land. Georgia continues to expand in size, and the economy increases. Okay, alcohol, the big difference. It's allowed now. Rum production increases. There's no more restrictions on it, so they're buying it and they're producing it. And slavery changes as well. Now it's legal in Georgia as a royal colony. So crops increase with the increase of slavery. The royal colony has self-government, 3 branches similar to today. They have the executive, that was the royal governor, who's appointed by the king. We have legislative, which is made up of 2 houses, the upper and the lower house, and then the judicial, which is the courts. Okay? All right, and examples of the kinds of goods and services produced and traded in colonial Georgia. If you think about during the trustee period, we have indigo, we have silk, and we have grapes and wine. And then from later during a royal colony, we have timber because there's wood to be cut down. There's tobacco. Once they're able to start planting that, rice, furs from trapping. These are all examples of goods and services during colonial Georgia. And that is it.